Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lessmore by William Joyce. The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lessmore. Morris Lessmore loved words. He loved stories. He loved books. His life was a book of his own writing, one orderly page after another. He would open it every morning and write of his joys and sorrows, of all that he knew and everything that he hoped for. But every story has its upsets, and one day the sky darkened and the winds blew. Oh, no, there he is. There's always so much glare. Isn't that cool? Till everything Morris knew was scattered, even the words of his books. He didn't know what to do or which way to go, so he began to wander and wander. And then a happy bit of happenstance came his way. Rather than looking down, as has become his habit, he looked up. Drifting through the sky above him, Morris saw a lovely lady. She was being pulled along by a festive squadron of flying books. Morris wondered if his book could fly, but it couldn't. It could only fall to the ground with a depressing thud. The flying lady knew Morris simply needed a good story, so she sent him her favorite. The book was an amiable fellow and urged Morris to follow him. The book led him to an extraordinary building where many books were nestled. What does that place look like? It's like a library. Morris slowly walked inside and discovered the most mysterious and inviting room he had ever seen. It was filled with the fluttering of countless pages, and Morris could hear the faint clatter of 1,000 different stories, as if each book were whispering an invitation to adventure. That is so cool. And then his new friend flew up to him and landed on his arm, and it held itself open as if hoping to be read. And the room rustled to life, and so Morris's life among the books began. Morris tried to keep the books in some sort of order, but they always mixed themselves up. The tragedies needed cheering up and would visit the comedies. The encyclopedias, weary of the facts, would relax with the comic books and the fiction. All in all, it was an agreeable jumble. Morris found great satisfaction in caring for the books, gently fixing those with fragile bindings and unfolding the dog-eared pages of the others. Sometimes Morris would become lost in a book and scarcely emerge for days.
Mama?
Hold on a second, honey. Morris liked to share the books with others. Sometimes it was a favorite that everybody loved, and other times he found a lonely little volume whose tale was seldom told. Everyone's story matters, said Morris, and all the books agreed. At night, after all the stories that needed telling had been told and everyone had settled down to their proper places on the shelves, the great big dictionary would get in the last word. Z, 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 Z. It was then that Morris Lessmore would once again write in his own book. He wrote of his joys and his sorrows, of all that he knew, and everything that he hoped for. The days passed, and so did the months, and then the years, and years. Getting very old. And Morris Lessmore became stooped and crinkly, but the books never changed. Their stories stayed the same. Now his old friends took care of him the way he had once cared for them, and they read themselves to him each night. Aw. And then one day, he filled the last page of his books. He looked up and said with a bittersweet sigh, I guess it's time for me to move on. Yes.
Why did you say that?
The books were sorry, but they understood. Morris put on his hat and took his cane, and as he went to the door, he turned and smiled and then waved goodbye. I'll carry you all in here, he said, and pointed to his heart. The books waved their pages, and Morris Lessmore flew away. And as he flew, he changed back to the way he'd been that long ago day when they'd all first met. The books were quiet for a while, and then they noticed that Morris Lessmore had left something behind. It's his book, said his oldest friend. Inside was Morris's story of all his joys and sorrows, of all that he knew and everything that he hoped for. And then the book heard a small, expectant sound, and there in the doorway was a little girl. She looked around with wonder, and then something fantastic happened. Mr. Morris Lessmore's book flew up to her and opened its pages. The girl began to read, and so our story ends as it begins, with the opening of a book. That's it. Morris Lessmore. What'd you guys think? I love that one.